Hi, welcome to the Fatherly Edition, a podcast by Tommaso Maggio alongside with a cavalcade of Daddy. Join us!
Hi everyone, welcome back to the Fatherly Edition with Tommaso Maggio, and today we are with Matt, that is a software developer that is traveled and lived a long time in Asia, from India to China, as nowadays is based in Thailand with a wife and two beautiful daughters. So welcome here, Matt, and thank you for being with us today.
Hi, Tommaso. Thank you for having me on your podcast.
Can you introduce a bit yourself and
Sure.
how was Matt before having kids and nowadays? I saw from your website, so that is a very nice visual story. Can you tell us a bit of with your own manner?
Sure. So I'm originally from the UK. I grew up there, went to school there, graduated. But then since I graduated, I've really lived my whole adult life outside of Britain. So I moved first to India, lived there for a year. Then I moved to China, and I lived in Shanghai for about 10 years. That's also where I met my wife, who's from the US. And then about 6 years ago, we moved to Thailand, and have been living in Bangkok ever since. I kind of find it funny when people ask me about Britain. You know, what do British people think about, or what do English people do about it? I'm like, I don't know. I haven't lived there for like 15, 16 years. And as I said, as an adult, I've really spent my life in Asia. So, I'm perhaps more of an expert on that. I'm the CTO of a small tech company based in Hong Kong. I work remotely based here in Thailand. I enjoy the city. I guess you were saying, how has, what was my life like pre and post COVID? Pre and post baby.
Well, not past kids, but with kids, let's say.
I think I was obviously living in different places, and like when you look back at, I really enjoyed living in Shanghai, and it was a fun place. But partly that was also I was in my 20s, and I wanted to go out and party and drink and meet people and stuff. And then it's not to say I necessarily would want that as my life now when I'm a bit older, every night, and it's just a very different life. So I've also always really liked to travel. I've been to over 60 countries in the world, when we had kids, we thought we wanted to take them traveling with us as well. And that was possible for the first couple of years with my older daughter. It hasn't been so easy with the second daughter so far, but I'm hoping we can get to do a bit more traveling with both of them now that we're getting towards the tail end of the pandemic, hopefully.
Yeah, so the pandemic doesn't help, in this aspect. So we didn't have much chance to travel, but now finally things seems open again for a better, and probably we can. Yeah.
I took my older daughter when she was like 1 and 2 year old, and we went to the US, we went to even Chile and Indonesia and stuff like that. And I enjoyed traveling with her, but I mean she's not going to remember that. She was too little. So the real memories that you can make while traveling are going to be when the kids are a bit older. So in some ways, it wasn't so bad that we were sort of shut inside for a couple of years when the kids were really young, because I didn't really feel like we're missing out on travel experiences and things like that, and they weren't going to school yet either. So in some ways the timing for us was not so bad with the pandemic. It was when the kids were like 2, 3, before they were really old enough to really understand what was going on.
Yeah, so at least you say you can spend more time with your kids, because that age is quite good to stay with them around. Of course, if they were 12 or 15, 16, the challenge probably would be much complex, right?
Yeah, I had friends who had kids who were like school age and older teenagers, and they found it incredibly frustrating. I think, for us, it was still very all consuming, the challenges of dealing with two little kids in your house all the time. But it was nice as well, of course. Yeah, but we got to spend time with them, and people always say, oh, they're only young once. Well, that's absolutely true. They are only young once, and I feel grateful I was able to spend all that time with them. It didn't feel like a chore, of course, when you got the two little kids with you. So I'm happy in that way.
Yes, I think was a good opportunity, especially for new parents. Who else has the same opportunity to spend so much time with the kid at that age?
Right, exactly.
And
I think I was working remotely even before COVID. I did work in office before, but since I came to Thailand, I've been working remotely. And so in some ways, it wasn't a huge change for me when everyone started working. Yeah. But what it has done is it's completely normalized that idea, and particularly in tech where I work, an awful lot of jobs now have the option to go remote. It's made companies understand that this is a possibility, which makes me think in the future, I don't want to go back to an office. I'm like, and I think now in a post-COVID world, I won't have to, because I think, even if I do switch jobs in the future, I think there's going to be enough like remote jobs out there that I wouldn't, have to go into an office. And I'm honestly fine with that because, I think as a lot of tech workers do, the offices often are just full of distractions and, you'd rather just work from a more comfortable place at home.
It's true. And then you have the flexibility, so you don't have to sit all the time on the same desk. So
sure.
So there are a lot of pros and cons. Yes.
Yeah, it can be tricky when you've got the kids, jumping all over.
Of course.
Yes. When you have a Zoom call, but I think I remember a few years, probably 6 or 7 years ago now, there was that video of a man being interviewed on the BBC, and his like running behind him, right? And at the time, everyone thought that was so hilarious. And yet now that same situation must have played out like a million times during the pandemic, to the extent that no one is bothered by it anymore. No one's going to get, embarrassed or find it hilarious if a kid runs into the background of a Zoom call.
Exactly. How is the routine basically? So
pretty much
can happen at any time.
Yeah, and you still need to be flexible. For example, my job, my boss. She has two kids as well of similar ages, and so we are very accommodating with each other. If we're having a Zoom call and one of us has a kid dancing behind them, or the other one is trying to eat some food because we didn't have any chance to eat food today during the day, that's completely normalized. So perhaps the levels of you might say professional decorum have decreased from what I would expect in the past, but I think that's healthy. Honestly, I think we shouldn't, as long as work is getting done,
exactly.
As long as people work, does it matter what we're wearing? Does it matter if we're online or we're in the office? Does it matter if we're holding a baby or bouncing a baby on our head or, playing with something at the same time? I think that's, in some ways it's recheck the work-life balance and more.
I think so, no? So it makes more, at least more honest, no? So you say, of course, that's life, it's part of life. You have your job, but there are many other things that beside you do your task, but then you have your own family that can be with you, and you can do multitask at the same time,
Yeah.
And I cannot do isolate. Yeah.
Doing anything creative as well, you need that time. You can't just sit at a computer for 8 hours in a row and expect it to do good work. Right, that never works.
Exactly.
Even when I was working in an office, I'd get stuck on a problem for 2 hours, and then I'd pop down to lunch or take a walk or something, and that's when I would solve the problem I was stuck on.
Yeah, so it's not by watching the screen, no?
Right. It's when you take a break from it, go do something else. You play with your kids. That's when suddenly, you realize that breakthrough. So. Yeah, brains need those breaks, and so I think you should never feel guilty that about having to do that juggling. I do plenty of work. I do plenty of teaching and playing with my kids too, and hopefully those balance it out.
Yes, I think this is an healthy way I think at the end of the day, this new normalization, new normal, rebalance the things somehow. At least not for everyone, but at least for the one who can take those chances. And since we are in this conversation, so I think our generation, or this generation, how different is compared to the generation of your father, for instance?
Right. I mean, I think it's a good question. I think it's hard to really generalize because
you can talk about your experience. Yeah,
exactly. You talk about your own. You only really know what your own family is like.
Of course. And
guessing what other people are like.
Yeah, I assume.
Also from what you read, what you see on TV, things like that. I mean, I had a very sort of happy upbringing. I really enjoyed my childhood in Britain. I had a good relationship with both my parents. I think they had a fairly sort of modern approach to parenting, which perhaps is not so different to the sort of gentle parenting movement you get today. But there were things that were different. I mean, like my mum was a teacher, so she would get home at the same time as we would get home from school. But my dad worked in marketing in a company in London, and he'd have to commute in there every day. So I would see him briefly sometimes in the morning, but then I wouldn't see him until 7 p.m. or something when he got home from work. So I mean, and that was normal. He had to put a suit on every morning, a suit and tie on, and go into work in London and come back in the evening. And so he didn't get to see so much of his kids. So I think I'm happy that it's sort of more normalized now that you have those more flexible jobs and that people want to spend time with their kids. I think it's great that in a lot of countries now you get like paternity leave, like legal paternity leave. So when when you have a baby, you can actually spend a few weeks with them. I mean, the idea that you'd have to just like immediately go back to work and not see them would just sounds like awful. So that's normalized. And I think there's a general encouragement of men to talk about their feelings more. I think is a good thing. Talk about being a father and how you're feeling and so on. I mean, I think people can still be bad about bottling up their feelings, and certainly there have been times that as a parent when I a combination of worrying about work and worrying about my kids and so on, it all just becomes a bit much, and dealing with that. But I think, maybe the modern world does at least more encourage talking about that, encourage being open about that with your partner, with your friends, on a podcast.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have happened, 30, 40 years ago. Like, so particularly like the British have this, very idea of stiff upper lip where you don't, open up very much, and you have to really contain everything within yourself and not talk about things. And inherently, I don't think that's a bad thing. The stiff upper lip is not healthy for your own mental health. So I think it's good now in a more modern world that there is that encouragement to talk about your feelings.
I think so. And again, I think this pandemic helped in this aspect. So because we have so much, street inside, that it's nice to find a way to distress. And then you can find, of course, you can have a conversation, and then you can record the conversation. It's about emotions, not just about business, or I can even call this the business of emotion, because at the end of the day, being a father, how we parents nowadays, you deal with your emotion, and that's what is the main things. And we are aware of it, and it's a good chance to talk about. We never talk about this, and as you say, so it can be a good point. In your opinion, for your point of view as new fathers, let's say, what is the things that you struggle with as daddy? There is anything that you struggle, or maybe some preconception about father?
Right.
That
I think, it's sure. I mean, I think with my first child, there was a lot of fear, just genuine, like, I mean, there's no human emotion probably more powerful than fear, right? I was terrified of everything to start with. I mean, like both during pregnancy. You know, I was worried that my wife she could have some medical problem. I mean, the night when my first daughter was born, when my wife told me that her waters break, I went to my bathroom and I just vomited. It was just like a complete panic attack of like, I was scared something was going wrong. Once I vomited, I felt a lot better, and I went to the hospital, and everything went smoothly, and it was fine. But you know, my first daughter was a bit premature, so she spent time in the NICU ward, and I was just terrified the entire time. And then when we took her home, it's like, oh my God, I have this tiny creature who is completely dependent on me, you know, and you know, she thought, is she breathing? You know, are we buying the right things for her? Is she going to choke on something? You know, and the first year was just like fear, always fear of like, I mean, I'm not happiness as well, but you know, always scared that things were not right. You can sort of look back on it and laugh about it, but I think it is a genuine thing, and with the second time around, in some ways, it's a lot easier. And then, yes, you are now dealing with two kids, but I think that there's not quite that fear. You feel okay, I've done it once, you know, and you know, it is different doing it with second child, and we have different personalities, of course. But I think
you have a bit of training, at least.
A bit of training, and then I think as they get a bit older, I think we are kind of, I think, bombarded with a lot of information now about parenting. Like,
right.
I mean, in the past, I think with the baby, you're sort of making up as you go along. But in some ways, babies are simple. But then as they get a bit older and they have all these emotions and they have all these like, and they have personalities,
right.
And then you're like, how do I deal with that? And you get information from books and blogs and YouTube videos and portrayals in the media, and you know, and of course, as we know, social media can give this very, you know, very unrealistic portrayal of events, right? I think, you know, it's tough to know, you know, what being a good dad is, because we have so many of these things that we are you know, exposed to. I think I had a good dad, so I can, to a certain extent, like, model myself on that. But yeah, it's
I thought. Yeah, you raise a good point, no? So now we have so much information that a generation ago, so our father just rely on their own experience, but with a family experience.
Right. There were not TikTok videos about.
Yeah,
you know,
that's for sure.
And you know, they were not, you know, reading articles really about, you know, male parenting, because it wasn't seen as much as, like, you know, the men's responsibility. And now we have a more even division, which is a very good thing. It's like we do need to like figure out what our roles are, you know, how we can be good role models, how we can like do positive reinforcement of their behavior, but also, like, you know, set boundaries when they're not behaving well. And I think that it's a tough balancing act.
Yes, and at the end of the day, we are not prepared somehow, you know, because for generation and generation, so it always has been said that is the women's job to raise kids. Now things change, and yes, we try somehow. I think all of us try our own best, but at the same time, it's quite confusing, because it's hard. Of course, you can have had a great daddy, but you know, the generalization was a different story, no?
Yeah, for sure.
Women in charge.
The gender of your kids also has an impact as well. I mean,
for sure.
You know, I always thought, okay, you know, pre-kids, you know, I'm not going to treat them any differently if they're girls or boys, because I don't think you should do that. And I'll let them have the toys they want. And, you know, my kids love Lego, Duplo, you know, they love construction stuff, you know. But they also like dressing up in pink frilly dresses and pretending to be ballerinas. I'm fine with that. I say to myself, I'd also be fine with the fact if they were boys and like dress up in frilly dresses. Easy to say that when you have girls, but you know, thing where society can still frown on people. But similarly, you know, I think my kids can be very loud and boisterous sometimes. They like to scream and run around, and I don't care so much when they're at home, but of course they do that in public, and I get embarrassed about it, and then I think, what am I being hard on them because they're girls? Like, am I, is it wrong to say to them, be quiet? Would I let them get away with more, if they were boys? Because boys will be boys and so on. I really don't want to do that. I think, girls can be just as crazy and energetic as boys. I mean, I don't want to clamp down on that. But on the other hand, I don't want completely crazy, feral kids who are, have no boundaries. So, I think that's always a tough balancing act. And again, it's like, you don't have lots of opportunities to try this out. You might have, you have one or two or perhaps three kids, and you don't know what gender they're going to be. As I say, the personality can be so different as well. So, you want them to grow up into good people, of course. But, it's always, figuring it out,
Yes,
enough to all over that, but not, you don't want to like stifle their creativity or stifle their energy.
Yeah, I agree with you. And then at the end is a daily trailer, you're on train every day, because you try one direction and see if it works, and if not, you have always the chance somehow to try at least another perspective, or say different words to your kids, instead of say to not scream, just maybe your volume is a bit too loud, so you find always different perspective. Try to see
you constantly have to come up with these you constantly have to come up with these like tricks, these hacks,
exactly,
and like get them to do what you want without making it seem like you're getting what they want. And I think, it so often fails. When it works, you feel kind of happy. I mean, like, one game I use all the time is the, like, you never ask them yes/no questions, right? You don't say, do you want cereal? Because they'll say no. You say, do you want the cereal in the red bowl or the blue bowl? So you give them a choice, but the choice doesn't really matter, because they'll pick the one. Are we going to leave? Not, do you want to go to the playground? It's like, okay, are we going to leave now, or are we leaving 10 minutes? So giving them these choices, I think that works well. And, trying to make things into like a race. Like, if the kids are refusing to get dressed or get undressed, sometimes saying, whoever gets undressed first gets a high five. And then something.
Yeah, it's a sort of challenge, Try to challenge with a sort of award. The award has not to be a new toy, but it can be anything, It can be a little kiss, an hug, a give five. Yeah. But yes, it's nice to try all those different options.
And as I say, when it works, you're like, amazing parenting there, Matt. It's on the back. But then sometimes it doesn't work. Sometimes whatever you try, they will not listen. They will not do what you want. They will scream. They will shout. They will break things. And then, of course, you feel like a bad parent. And oftentimes feeling like a bad parent doesn't really make things any better, because you just feel sorry for yourself, or you get angry, and then they feed those emotions off you, and they get angry and grumpy as well. So, it's every day is different. Some days parenting seems so easy, It's just absolutely impossible.
Yeah, and then you realize that it's just, especially when they are very young, as 4, 6 years, they just reflecting your emotions somehow, and we forgot about it. So that's why, as you say, if you're angry, then they absorb that. So, and then as I was reading something, say if they cry, then before your angriness go away, it take maybe 8 hours, after to try to restore your body as everything run as normal. So, and I try to explain even to my daughter, if you cry for little things, then 8 hours, so the full day your body needs to adjust again. So, and then you reflect on this as well. So it's not applying just to kids, of course, to us as well. And I think having kids sort of having a mirror, and then you have a chance to reflect even your own action, as you say, all the time.
Everything they do is absorbed from their environment around them, right? And they spend so much time with their parents that, of course, they absorb so much stuff. and in both good and bad ways, like
Exactly. That's why we have to be aware of it.
Learning, of course, works that way, but everything works that way. Behavior and how they deal with emotions. Like, hopefully, if you're good at dealing with your emotions, they learn to be good at dealing with their emotions. But on the other hand, yeah, if you are, if you try so hard to like hide anything negative from them, that makes it, that stresses you out, and you're bottling something up yourself. That's not necessarily going to be good either, right? You've got, I don't think you should, if you, I subscribe to the idea of gentle parenting, that you should, not try to shout at your kids, that you should try and talk about emotions and so on. But, if you do lose your temper occasionally, I don't think, you should feel incredibly guilty and beat yourself up over that fact, right? Because that's just going to make things worse, right?
Exactly.
You need to feel, you need to be in a mentally good space. And sometimes that probably involves shouting at someone. It would be best if it wasn't your child. But, if that happens occasionally, it's not going to, like, severely damage their, their emotional state or upbringing. They will understand that occasionally mum or dad is shout. And I don't think that's an awful thing. As long as the bulk of your interactions with them is positive and making sure that, the praise that you give them outweighs any criticisms you make of them, then I think that's okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. So, and then at the same time, they need to experience, the brood of emotion. Because, they sometimes they scream, but it can happen that you see an adult to scream as well. So can happen to everyone. So as you say, as far as you explain to them what's going on, why those things happen, and then you have a positive conversation with them. So explain things. So always the key, I think, as you mentioned before, explaining. That's it.
I think sometimes you can't explain in the moment. I think.
Yes,
like
maybe take a bit.
Time.
Yeah.
I think oftentimes I feel like if my kids are upset, my goal in the moment is often just to try and calm them down. Right? And then sometimes even when they are behaving very, irrational and angry or upset at the time, they can often actually, that evening, let's say, before they go to bed, sometimes they can have a pretty sensible and lucid conversation about it, talking about why they were angry. But yeah, I think sometimes you just gotta wait, because as you say, you've got maybe this 8-hour cool down period where they're still angry about something, or you're still angry about something, and you can't really have a sensible conversation there. But it is important to have those conversations. But yeah, maybe sometimes it's better just to walk away and have that conversation later.
Yeah, so you need to find the right timing, Yeah, exactly. Because when they're in the middle of something, you can't just start to have a philosophical conversation, because there is no sense. Actually, that will not work for both of you. You are talking to the mirror, basically to the wall, and for that they will not listen. So, but as you say, there's always a moment that you can catch up as parents to see, okay, me now is the right moment, to talk about. Always, of course, short conversation don't take 1 hour to explain, but it's nice to go deep in some topics with them. Yeah. I think at any age. So
at any age, for sure. Yeah. I think my problem, I tend to do that like before bedtime, and then that delays them going to sleep, because I'm trying to like talk about things they're having during the day, and it's tough when they're talking. They don't want to stop, of course.
Yeah.
You don't want to like reignite arguments that you had earlier in the day or whatever. But it is important. Put limits on it, but I often find I'm surprised sometimes by how mature they can talk about things. If you want to have a serious conversation, it can be hard enough to have serious conversation with adults sometimes. So it's nice sometimes when you can have a more serious conversation with kids.
It's true. And I think it's just, I was talking with another daddy, it's just a matter of how you communicate with your kids. Tone of voice, the wording you're using. And sometimes, it's more rewarding to talk with your kids about even complex things than others. Yeah. So it's surprising. It's surprised how they listen, their feedback as well. It just is a daily learning.
Yeah, for sure. There's a human need to get to talk and be listened to.
Right.
And I think having kids, even if you're good at talking, it hopefully teaches you to be better at listening.
Exactly.
And yeah, even if they don't understand everything you're saying, I mean, I do believe in to a certain extent, talking to kids like adults. So yes, you do have to simplify things. They don't understand everything, but yeah, I mean, they will learn from that, even if they don't follow everything you're saying. I think the tone of voice you use, as you say, and just the idea of talking about things like this is positive and makes them. The last thing you want to do is have kids who don't want to talk to you, right?
Exactly.
Who, because at the moment the problems they have are minor ones. Somebody didn't want to play with them at school, or they hurt their knee, or they got angry because they didn't have a certain toy. But as they grow older, the problems might be actual serious, more serious ones.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to be in a situation. I want to be a dad where if my kid was a teenager and had a problem, they would not feel scared to come to me to tell me about something, even if they'd done something wrong. They would actually, come and help me and hope and not feel that I would judge them for that.
I think that is an important point. Yes. Just always an open conversation. No? Yeah.
But yeah, certainly I don't want to be, I don't want them to be scared of me. I always want them to be able to talk to me. Of course, there's things you don't want to talk to your parents about. But I think the more open relationship you can have, the better. I know in the end they're going to go away and have their own lives, and I don't want to think about that at the moment. But I want to make the most of the time we have together, and I want to, as I say, hopefully set up something that in the future they'd always feel comfortable talking to us.
Right, that makes absolute sense, and just agree with you. One last question that is quite difficult. So, what you learned so far, the experience you learned so far from your kids as daddy? If there's one thing you can pick.
I mean, I guess in reality, it's that people say. I mean, I was a kind of entrepreneur. I ran my own company in China for 7-8 years. And people say, "Oh, running a business is like having a child," And having had a child, I'm like, okay, only people who've not had children would probably say that. I mean, running a business is hard, but if you get to the point where you care about it so much that it's like having a child, that's probably not a good thing. I think having kids has taught me that a lot of things I used to care a lot about are not that important. That yes, I want to have a successful career. I want to I want to have nice things, but it's the experiences of having my kids just so outweigh any of those other things before. I like traveling. I had a dream I'd probably go to every country in the world one day. I'm not going to do that, but I'd like to go back to some of the places I've really enjoyed with my kids now. So yeah, I think it's just like teaching yourself that it's the experiences that matter. It probably seems kind of cliche. They talk about how people nowadays, they care about experiences, but I think that's true. Because like I said, we went to Chiang Mai recently, and it was a nice break, just like 4 or 5 days away from Bangkok, and we went to this like elephant sanctuary, and they have like even though they were kind of scared at the time, since we got back, it's all they talk about is the elephants. How big they were, and even the fact that they were scared, the fact that and I'm never going to forget like walking with these giant elephants with my kids. That is so memorable. So yeah, I think it's all the memories you make. It's all the experiences you can have. And it's getting you to share it with these tiny people who just find everything like wonderful and amazing sometimes. Those kind of experiences make up for all the other, the stress and the worry of being a parent.
For sure. They help us, to rediscover things they before already we knows already. So we give us a new eyes to see things, and that's the best gift, actually. So thank you very much, Matt, for being with us today. And
thank you so much. Conversation.
And we will catch up soon. Thank you again.
Okay. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for listening, the Fatherly Edition. If you like what you've been hearing, please follow Tommaso Maggio on LinkedIn or subscribe to the Fatherly Edition podcast on Spotify, Apple, or whatever you gain your podcasts.